Dr. Alan Sked, the original Eurosceptic, a historian turned politician, and he's my guest today.
A European swing to the right is troubling Brussels. Britain's maverick UKIP is gaining points at home, all as another Eurosceptic bloc is propping up on the horizon, this time on the left side of the political mainstream. Do they have better answers? When will the UK see the end of austerity? Is a British exit from the EU a real possibility?
Dr. Alan Sked, founder of the New Deal Party, Eurosceptic, politician, scholar. It's great to have you on our show today. Welcome. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and start. You're the one who founded UK's Independence Party. You're also its biggest critic nowadays because you left it. But this year, they've reached their highest success yet, 24 member seats in the EU Parliament. The people have voted for it. Are those people to be criticized as well?
No, I think the people vote for it merely as a protest vote. They're absolutely not interested in the European Parliament. There have been dozens of UKIP MEPs since going back to 1999. They don't do anything constructive there. They just go to take the money, the expenses, get pensions. The leader, Nigel Farage, has claimed that he's taken over £2 million in expenses, although he hardly ever turns up. He doesn't go to key meetings. He avoids key debates, as do most of the others. Two of his MEPs have been put in jail for fraud. They're really a very sad reflection of protest politics. They're not very bright, and people vote them in really to show contempt for the European Union and its institutions.
All right, so you're saying it's a protest vote, but what's so bad about that? I mean, all it comes down to is that people want some change, no?
Yeah, but they don't articulate any politics or any policies, or they behave. They're hardly ever there. I mean, they don't make a case for British exit inside the European Parliament. They're really just a bunch of not very bright people getting as much money and expenses as they can possibly get. They represent about, what, 29% of turnout of the electorate of about 35%. So that's about 9% of the electorate as a whole. It makes no difference to what happens in the European Parliament, where there's an overwhelming majority of federalists who treat them with contempt, which they deserve. And if they say they don't believe in the European Parliament or European institutions, that we shouldn't be there, but yet they're there, and they're there because they want to make money out of it. They're contemptible, in my view.
Now, I see you're still kind of against the European Parliament, and back when you were founding the UKIP, you also refused to send members to the European Parliament because you didn't want to legitimize it.
That's right, yeah.
Now, your current New Deal party aims to pressure the left into Euroscepticism, while UKIP does the same thing from the right. So it seems like you do need them, despite loathing them.
Oh, I mean, I understand that. I mean, I set up the party originally to put pressure on the Conservatives, who were then in power, in order to move in a Eurosceptic direction. And indeed, the Conservatives have done that, and they still will probably split over the question of Europe. And David Cameron may lose the election and lose his prime ministership over Europe. But the party I set up was supposed to be a mainstream, rational, decent, democratic party, appealing to the whole breadth of the British electorate, all classes, all races, all religions. And if one looks at opinion polls about British people and their views of coming out of the EU, up until about 4 years ago, there was a majority, about 55%, who said they were in favour of coming out. Now, after all the bad publicity that Farage and UKIP have attracted to the racist and extremist views, that majority has gone down to a minority of about 47, 48%. So my fear is that instead of, that they're still putting pressure on the Tories, but they're creating such hostility that it might be that in a very narrow-fought referendum, they'll be so toxic that a certain section of the population will vote to stay in rather than support UKIP.
Yeah, but look,
That's why a New Deal is necessary.
I know, but whatever the reason is, David Cameron has promised a referendum on British exit. What do you expect from that? Do you think that will ever happen? Do you think it will ever take place?
I think there will be a referendum in the next 2 or 3 years. For one thing, it's quite possible that the federalists inside the European Commission and the federalists inside the Parliament will want to push further towards the goal of ever closer union, in which case a new treaty would be required. And if a new treaty is required, there would have to be a referendum, and it would be very difficult not to make that an in-out referendum given political conditions in Britain. As for Cameron's own pledge of a referendum, well, that's entirely dependent on David Cameron winning the next general election, and that doesn't look too likely at present. I'd put my money on Labour just now, but he might win, and if he wins and doesn't have a majority, it's not clear that he could get a referendum bill through Parliament.
But what are your thoughts? Why would he make this promise in the first place? I mean, did he all of a sudden become a genuine Eurosceptic, or is it really all for the votes?
Oh, no. David Cameron has no principles whatsoever. If you examine his record and his speeches and what he's written over the course of his political career, it's entirely opportunistic and contradictory. He just thinks he should be there in power, but he doesn't actually know why. He just likes it. He's not there because he has an ideology, because he has a set of principles. He's there because he wants to possess power. So he's opportunistic, and because there were fissures inside the Conservative Party, largely given the due caused by what looked like the rise of UKIP, then he made promises which he thought would stifle debate about Europe inside the Tory party. But remember, UKIP only got to that. Wait a minute, UKIP only got to that situation because the Lib Dems went into a coalition, and then, although UKIP had no policies as such, they became the default party of protest, which the Lib Dems used to be.
But about that referendum, just a little bit more, hypothetically speaking, how big of a blow would a British exit be for the European Union?
Oh, I think it would be a huge blow. It would be revolutionary. And I don't think Britain would be the only country to come out. I think we would be followed by others. The assumption sometimes made that if Britain were to come out, it would be Britain against the rest of the European Union. But there's no way of knowing how much of the European Union would remain. I mean, I think France would follow soon afterwards. There would then be an unraveling. And, Europe would go into meltdown, but it could, it would be fluid. All sorts of possible alternative Europes could arise.
But are you sure that if Britain leaves the EU, nobody will feel the consequences in their wallets? I mean, are you not faced by the warnings of economic turmoil? I'm talking inside Britain, of course.
No, I don't think it'd make much difference. We just carry on trading. After all, I mean, the Germans wouldn't want to stop selling us cars and washing machines. The French would still want to sell us wine and cheese and whatever else they sell. They sell twice as much to us as we sell to them. So if they wanted a trade war or anything, which wouldn't be in their interest, they would suffer twice as much. But quite frankly, I mean, I think the whole thing could be sorted out smoothly. We could have an amicable divorce. And I don't think it would make much difference.